Good evening and welcome Between the Lines. I'm back after a month. This is Alan Beauchamp. No shirt, no tie. Dragged myself out of my house. 21 days ago, I had a knee replacement, and they're different. They are different. Rehab's going well. We've had fun. I really appreciate Wendy Manis sitting in the last 4 weeks. It's been, she's done a great job. Me and her will be on together next week to talk about some issues. The library seems to be on the front. I had to come early because library books are a big issue right now all across the nation. I actually got an email yesterday. I want to welcome my guest, whose career is a little more illustrative and spectacular than mine, but Tommy Mariner, who's been in Anderson County. How long have you been up there teaching, Tommy, before you retired?
I taught at Anderson County High School for 17 years.
Wow. And he's a career military man, graduated F-22, pilot. We got a lot to talk about him and his family. But it's interesting. I got a text today. It may have been an email, but I think it was a text saying, this is so-and-so from this so-and-so group. If I've known him, because I do political consulting around Eastern United States, help us do whatever you can with the books in the libraries. And, which just shows it's a concerted effort. I mean, it's all across the country. I didn't respond. But anyway, I want to talk about that tonight, and because it's a hot topic. I probably get an average 20 texts when I put out a show and say, look, here's what we're going to talk about, and I get it on social media and everything. But I probably had 140. I mean, they're all over the place. Alan, don't forget to tell them about this mess and that mess. Democrats, Republicans, everybody. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about the First Amendment. And we're going to talk about some other things and the reality of stuff. Before we get started, I just want to say the whole thing, and I'll talk about it. I had a friend of mine who's a conservative consultant, advocacy guy in Washington, D.C., and most people know I'm a Republican. And he was talking to me. He said, Alan, I'm going to tell you something. I've fought every battle there is for the last 30 years of conservative causes. But if I wanted to hide books or information about things I don't want my children to see, I'd put them in the library. That's what he told me this week. He said, I just don't understand the fight. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Okay. Tommy, welcome. Tell me a little bit about your background. We talked about you being a baseball player a little bit before the show and flying. So you went to Kingston High School.
Yes, sir.
Took the Wildcats out of the tournament. That was disheartening, but I get
best
that.
moment of my sports career was laying down a bunt against Oak Ridge in 1968.
A good team that year, too.
Clinton High School field. Yes, it was a good team. I played with a lot of those
Alvin Taylor
guys.
was in that group, too, from Clinton. There's some boys over there.
As I told you, I played with Grayson Strang, and fine young man. We lost him way too early.
Whew. You had three guys really in the fix. Steve Fritz, Grayson caught in that same group, a year older. Grayson Strang and John Shuey, and they were just three of the really just Stallone-type spectacular athletes. And John Shuey was a basketball player, and the other two were football and baseball. Gray was a true baseball player.
They beat us around for 3 years, and we got them senior year.
It's the way to do it. You get the last one. That's the one you want to get, and that's the one everybody remembers. So you went to Kingston. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the military and school, and you went to UT.
Yes, sir. I went to UT. Well, I grew up all around East Tennessee. My mom was a home demonstration agent first in Campbell County, where my daddy's from. He was from Jacksboro, graduated from Jacksboro.
What does that mean, home demonstration agent?
Home demonstration agents in the old days used to go out to meet with club women. Women didn't get out near as much.
Correct.
So mom would take the various skills, sewing, cooking.
Yeah. Kind of a home ec thing, right?
Home ec, and also talked a lot about taking care of the budget and running the household from that standpoint, and then always pushing education. Good. And she was a graduate of Berea, lifelong contributor to Berea, and
most heavily endowed school in Eastern United States.
And I still give them a little bit of money every now and then.
Great school.
And I'm very proud of Anderson County students who got to go to Berea.
Yeah, you couldn't pick a better.
That's their mission, is to educate the Appalachian children. So I grew up following her around to meetings and in the 4-H club in Claiborne County, and then we moved to Kingston when I started fourth grade.
Okay.
And graduated from high school there, honor student, a math award winner, national winner in community beautification. In fact, one of my things I helped beautify in the community was the library. And my mom had taken library science in college, and that was part of home ec at the time. And so she was very proud of her library work. She actually got fired from the University of Tennessee because she got married in 1949.
Wow.
Back in the old days, you couldn't have a married woman teaching homemakers how to take care of a home.
Doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Didn't make any sense, but anyway, she survived it. Got a job at Fairview Elementary School.
Great school, by the way.
In Anderson County and down Hickory Valley. My daughter went to that school. Her and my mom decided she would go to that school, and she also got fired from that job because she got pregnant with me, and you couldn't have a pregnant woman around school children at that time. So she went to work as a librarian, fell back on that, and worked at Wynn High School and also at Horace Maynard.
Yeah, Knox County, right? And they said that's pretty much where maybe your interest in library came from.
Well, she also took me to libraries, and that's where I spent a lot of my time. I was a voracious reader, and for my 10th birthday, she bought me a World book, and I read it.
Seriously, I got my World books on my 10th birthday.
I read it that summer, 1959 version. I can still draw all the borders in Africa. I just can't name all the countries that have changed.
Yeah.
So
we did the same thing.
My library background was discovering a whole world in the library, and then I started paying a lot of attention to what NASA was doing, and would watch.
It was an exciting time.
Would watch John Glenn
on
the pad. Finally got launched on his 10th attempt, and
I watched the show. The numbers show, the numbers. What
yes,
with
hidden numbers.
Yeah, hidden numbers, right? And that was very interesting.
And I did that up at Union County, up at our farm, which I still have some beef cattle up in Union County on that same farm. But my grandma, she inspired that. She loved to watch the space program. Loved boxing too. I wasn't much of a boxer, but.
Yeah.
And I had got me a Steve Canyon helmet for my 11th birthday, and from that point on, I wanted to be a pilot, and went to UT aerospace engineering, and then ended up graduating actually in political science because I thought, well, maybe I want to go be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Aerospace industry fell apart in 1971, 72. Nobody
It really did.
jobs.
I was a little younger, but yeah, it did.
And so I joined, but when I went over and talked to the Army recruiter about doing some work for law school and them paying for it, he said, well, we don't do that. We've got a lot of these guys coming out of Vietnam. We don't need new guys to be lawyers for us. What else would you like to do? I said, well, I always wanted to fly. And he said, well, the Navy kills pilots every week on aircraft carriers. You can go out and fly for them anytime. And I walked in and I met the qualifications, and it was not a bad choice for me at all.
No. And you flew, did you fly commercially?
No, I never flew commercially.
In the military. You said you stayed in the military.
Stayed in the military for 22 years, did not fly after I got out, went back to the family farm in Union County, and started working with the American Legion and trying to get Union County an ROTC unit. Ended up getting one for Anderson County instead.
You did. It was very well
And we
run.
started that in 2001, right before Desert Storm. Right before 9/11, and that sort of changed things. People suddenly became more patriotic, more interested in that stuff.
It works like that, doesn't it?
Anderson County High School was.
And when we were little, the Cuban Missile Crisis kind of had the same
Absolutely
effect,
got your attention, and Anderson County was sort of a perfect place for an ROTC unit, and I helped get the unit started at Clinton, the Air Force ROTC there, and also introduced it over here at Oak Ridge. Eventually, it started about 5 years ago.
I see him down here. I used to see him down here drilling in the Daniel Arthur building down there on the weekends and stuff. And
Very good unit. They just got back a couple of years ago we went out to the December 7th parade in honor of the Pearl Harbor attack, and they did that about 4 years later. So.
Tell me about your family. You got a wife, kids?
My wife is deceased now. We got married in 1980. Met on a Navy project. We got married in the high desert at China Lake. She was flying A-7s like I was. We had something in common. She was also flying F-86s, developing those into drone aircraft. I really impressed her, telling her I was really impressed. She must be a good pilot if she could fly a drone. She went out with me anyway. So
that's all right.
Silver-tongued devil. And we married for 39 years.
Wow.
She passed away 4 years ago from ovarian cancer after a 5-year flight. Have one daughter. Emily graduated in 2021 from Duke. She was an A.B. Duke Memorial
She took
Scholar.
your study habits, didn't she? Yeah.
Well, my study habits in college were not all that much.
Yeah,
She did
but
much
you know
better
what I'm
than I
saying.
did.
You know what I'm saying.
But,
my dad skipped 2 grades. My mother was smart, and I was an athlete. So,
Yeah,
you know, I didn't do much.
well, I tried to be an athlete. I was better as a student, but actually in college I was probably best as a frat.
I loved reading. I just didn't do a lot of it, but I loved reading. I did more, probably average, or better, but I could just, get back to the ball fields and the other things. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed libraries. I mean, I can make a joke about being there once a year, but I mean, the main use of libraries in Oak Ridge for us was, let's all meet at the library and do this project.
Right.
Not many individuals went in, but we did if we had a report or, but we're still under the Dewey Decimal System and different things of that nature. So, but it's a resource that is necessary. And what we're going to aim at tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a big controversy. I'm about tired of the hatred and the anger in this country from both sides of the arguments. We have no civility left, Tommy. It's just terrible.
Well,
I mean, people scream. At that meeting in Quentin, one gentleman got him talking about putting people in jail and that has no place.
That was the aberration in that meeting. Most people were relatively civil.
Okay.
They observed with a little help the 3-minute rule.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
It was sort of democracy. I can argue both sides of the issue. Pretty strongly on both sides of the issue.
My point on this show is there's a system. There are protocols and there are ways to do this. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And most of the people I get, the number one central idea I get from everybody is, Alan, when's it going to stop? It's this today, what's it tomorrow, what's next? And that's the biggest problem. I mean, we have, and I want you to feed into this a little bit, but we have books in those libraries. I gave a speech when I was 24 in Memphis to a religious group. I was in graduate school. And the guy that shared the stage with me, a little more progressive in those days, but the guy that shared the stage with me was the guy, you remember, who went to Harvard, who built the atomic bomb in his dorm room. Remember, he assembled all the parts and everything, and they couldn't believe how he got it because all that information was out there, and he came and talked about that and how risky it was. But the point being that there was a lot of excitement about doing things and doing the right thing, but I just, no internet. Right, we had nothing like that.
And you discovered a lot of things in the library at that time. I encountered the book I hate the most in the library. Read it sitting in the floor at the little library down in Kingston. No, I'm not going to name it.
Okay, all right.
But you'll be able to
go read it, right?
You'll be able to figure it out because it killed about 100 million people or so, and it was this guy got elected democratically. And then he executed what was in that book. And when I read the book, I went home and asked my mom and dad. I said, "My goodness, what is this?" And they said, "Well, maybe more people should have read it and seen where the guy was going to take us." And
it's more common in the world. I do a lot of work as a consultant in the nuclear industry and in the defense industry, and I know a little bit about everything. And it's a challenge every day. It's just happening all over the world. When everybody was focused on what was going on in Europe, Pol Pot was over here doing things in Cambodia and others. I mean, it's a war, that kind of abuse. Let's take a short break and look at our sponsors for a second. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about library books.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
When should you get tested for COVID-19? You have symptoms of COVID-19, such as runny nose, congestion, sore throat, fever, cough, shortness of breath, muscle pain, headache, chills, or loss of taste or smell. Current testing recommendations say everyone should get tested immediately if they have symptoms of COVID-19. If you have symptoms, be sure to follow recommendations about how long to stay home and away from others. For more information, visit our If You Are Sick or Test Positive webpage.
In East Tennessee, winter can be a wild ride of constantly changing weather and cold outdoor fun. Warm up with natural gas heat, hot water, cooking, and soft, comfy clothes. More affordable and reliable than electricity, natural gas makes homes cozy and more valuable. Whether you're a contractor or savvy homeowner, switch to natural gas for your primary energy source. Visit us online at orud.org or call today. Oak Ridge Utility District, your affordable energy source.
Okay, so I'm sitting there with a blown up leg, and they've chiseled, they've tourniqueted, they've destroyed my leg, all that stuff you do in a knee replacement. It's much more than I thought. And I said, and all of a sudden, I keep getting these texts and other stuff, and didn't really respond to much, that everything's blowing up over library books. And I hadn't heard that. In the 60s we went through it. Yes. In the 80s or 90s we went through it. But always with the idea that the First Amendment protected a lot of things. The idea is the majority of people in our county, for instance, are Christians, or always define themselves as Christians. But there is a minority Hindu population.
Right.
They should have, as a public taxpayers, they have the same access to their materials in the library that we do. Right. That's just a general religion. That's just a good example. Same with political philosophies. Same with other things. So we never had. Of course, I grew up in Oak Ridge, so it's it's a little more open-minded, I guess, in some ways. I'm saying that's a neutral comment, open-minded, not a positive comment. It just means we were more inclusive because we had more people from different parts and stuff. We didn't have a strong Appalachian Southern culture that dominated us like so all our rural communities do. And that's a gift to you guys. That's a great quality. But I just start from the premise of censorship is a bad word to me. I don't know what that means, and I have reviewed the materials that are in question, that were printed off the internet, that may or may not be in our libraries. I think some of it's expansive. I don't know that all those things are in our libraries. Right. But I personally, if I was the librarian, which I am not, and thank God that I'm not, but if I was, I probably would not put those in my library. That's just me. The cartoon characters and all that, I probably wouldn't put it in the library. But I don't think it's a unilateral decision by me. Really what we're talking about in a lot of this is not, they call it pornography, but it's really sex education on print.
Right.
That's what I read. That's what I would call it. But explicit, but that's what I would call it. But as an oversight, we're kind of got our finger in the dam while the water's gushing over the backside, because in reality, in 15 seconds, you can see anything you want on this phone, from TikTok on up, and we're worried about row 5, aisle 3. I don't get it. Now, I do respect the fact that this is a public taxpayer-supported thing, and everybody who's complaining about these materials has a right to on the other side. So what we're here for tonight is to say, how do you legitimately go through the process? In other words, I know from my government experience that money is appropriated by county commission for a number of things. First, it's collected by the trustee, taxes come in, they get a budget, they go with it, and they say, okay, we're going to appoint a library board, and we're going to have how many members on the library board?
Right now, I believe there's 10.
So there's 10 representing 4 libraries, though, Bryceville, like you said,
and the county
Lake
commission
City.
and the county.
Right, so they appoint it. At that point, their job's done. You've got these 10 library board members who hire a librarian, is my understanding, and the librarian works to hire the staff, whether you're involved or not, and you're on that board representing Norris. So if I hear a book that says Wizard of Oz, let's go right to the issue. If I go to the Wizard of Oz, which separates a separate Godhead and women and all the arguments they want to make, by either side of the argument, it's up to the librarian to sit down and say whether the Wizard of Oz should be in there. Not the county commission, not me, not you, but the librarian. If we're not happy with the direction of the materials in these libraries, then we should replace the board members and get a new librarian. Is that your understanding how the system works?
That is what the system works. The librarians, of course, when they come into the job, the librarian typically sits down and opens the door and looks at 14,000 books.
That's right.
In the case of Norris, 40,000 books in the case of Clinton. And already got those. The librarian doesn't go out and throw things away. She's going to preserve those things. And then each librarian is going to spend a lot of her time looking at catalogs, listening to people. People come in. I talked to the Clinton librarian today. She's got 48 requests for books.
Okay.
So people help her develop what they're going to order.
Sounds pretty normative.
It's pretty straightforward. She of course is trained as a librarian.
More than we are.
She has a little bit of expertise in how to develop the things. Everybody has their own biases, but
Sure.
she also has a staff working with her and
In an education.
And that allows the librarians to step forward and decide, this is the new book I'm going to get. These books are worn out.
Who votes on
Take
that
them out.
book? That committee, that staff?
Typically, that the librarian is making those decisions.
She signs off, but usually she'll get input from her other people and they'll say,
Right,
Okay.
and she gets community input. A lot of the stuff today is she fulfills requests for people that are homeschooling their children.
oh, that's good. I didn't
She
think about that.
fulfills requests from people that are taking the boat class and try to get boat certified.
Wow.
People that
Very functional stuff.
people that want to do some astronomy. They can probably check out from most libraries. They can check out a telescope. B, they can find a book that tells them what they're looking at.
Wow.
And those people make the inputs. She fulfills those. And in the course of a quarter, she may do something like 500 to 1,000 books, depending on the size of the library.
In 3-month periods, she may buy what now?
1,000 books.
Okay, so we take 1,000 books in a quarter. Does she provide the library board with a list of those books?
If we want it.
That's a good question.
Most of the time, we work with things on the library board. Typically, you're working with the budget. You're working about sliding money back and forth. You're working about
Sure.
trying to get help
Oversight, yeah.
to fix the roof at one place, to get the yard mowed at someplace else.
Is the
Those
content of the books in Bryceville, Lake City, Clinton, what am I missing?
Norris.
Norris. So have you got these 4, are they different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, each individual librarian is going to respond to her community, and she's going to have her own list that she goes to. They get a lot of help from the American Library Association. They put out stuff. They get a lot of. They review books, new books on the list, old books to replace the books they've got. Every now and then they come across something unique. We didn't have a copy of the Koran. They found a copy of the Koran. Fairly expensive thing to buy. They needed a copy.
legitimate.
They
It's a
needed a
legitimate
copy
thing.
of the Torah.
Sure.
As you said, there's people now that live in the county that are from India, and
It doesn't hurt us to all learn a little bit, right?
right. And so each individual librarian develops her own stuff, trying to meet the needs of her community as she understands it.
You have 4 librarians. and
4
4
librarians, and each librarian has a staff of, depending on the
2 or 3
size of the
people.
librarian, 5 or 6 people in the case of Clinton, and 1 or 2 people in the case of Bryceville.
You know, the Clinton Library is right above the football field.
Yes.
And I have used that library when I worked in Clinton, and it's a really well-run library.
It's
it did a
very
good
good
job.
facility. It's pretty good size, although they could always
Yeah,
use
sure.
more expansion, and they've got lots of books.
We're going to take another break, and we're going to come back, and I want to talk about how the library board been approached like County Commission has, and how does the complaint process work. Thank you. Stand by with Between the Lines, and thank you to all our sponsors.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine and always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
In East Tennessee, winter can be a wild ride of constantly changing weather and cold outdoor fun. Warm up with natural gas heat, hot water, cooking, and soft, comfy clothes. More affordable and reliable than electricity, natural gas makes homes cozy and more valuable. Whether you're a contractor or savvy homeowner, switch to natural gas for your primary energy source. Visit us online at orud.org or call today. Oak Ridge Utility District, your affordable energy source.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking about library books, one of the hottest subjects. Please take time to go see my buddy with Fan Gear Barn down across from the hospital. Craig's got some stuff, unique stuff down there, and collectibles and jerseys and cards and everything, and he just does. We needed something like that in Anderson County, Oak Ridge, and I appreciate Craig supporting the show. So we get a complaint. People are screaming. They don't like the materials that are in there. I read them all or looked over them all. Did they come to the library board first?
They came last summer. People began to start complaining. They said they didn't like what was there. They didn't come directly to the library board. They went to the librarian.
Which is legitimate.
And that's legitimate. And, of course, a lot of these issues have been litigated before in the 60s, talked about, fussed about. So you've got a process in Anderson County that allows them to talk with the librarian, see if they can get a resolution there. Then they put in a formal reconsideration to reconsider her decision or his decision, depending on the librarian, to keep it in the stock or to hold it someplace. And we generally don't hold things behind the counter. We just keep everything out on the shelves. That's the procedures that we've used, because they don't segregate books necessarily by content, just do it by the Dewey Decimal System.
I read David Clark, our district attorney general, who's actually has his elderly abuse programs on the show. And I thought it was really well written, and the answer is that there is some mitigating things that you know, the library has a system set up to where they try to segregate stuff to protect people and children. And that in itself is a defense of
right. It is a positive defense,
yes.
and it also we have procedures in the library itself. You gotta every child 17 and younger has to have a library card to be in there. Parents have to sign that. Every child under 11 has to have the adult in the facility with them while they're there. And we also have a procedure that on the library card, they could make notes. Don't allow my child to have these titles. Let's say a little girl is scared of clowns. And there are a few that are like that. And maybe more than a few. My daughter doesn't care much for clowns either. But she's got a little brother that loves to get clown books because he knows Mama and Daddy won't keep them in the house, but he can go to the library and he can check out a clown book, bring it home, and scare his sister to death. You can put on there, tell the librarian, don't let
Johnny,
little Jim Bob have any of the clown books because he's just trying to terrorize his sister. So that process is there too. But once the librarian has made her decision and they repeal the process formally, it comes to the board. One person off the board, the librarian and one other member of the library staff, or could be somebody from the community, sits down and they review the book. And that process is open. The person can come to the process, give their opinion, and then the librarian will make a decision along with a vote on her committee. And if they elect to keep the book, you've got an appeal. And you can appeal that to the library board. The library board will all read the book, then listen to the community. We did that in February. We had about 50 people or so in that room in February. We had the majority of people wanting to keep the books, but it was a large minority, and a very vocal one that wanted to get rid of the books. And we voted. I made the motion.
How many books were we talking about?
3 books.
Okay.
And those 3 books are a little more innocuous than some of the ones that got on the list that the mayor and the county commissioners wanted the sheriff to take a look at. But those 3 books.
Who gets accused of a crime in this? I'm confused.
What's
the criminal action?
There are criminal actions for peddling obscenity.
A librarian.
To minors.
Okay. Well,
if you're taking it to minors. Now, there's a positive defense, as Attorney General pointed out, that if you restrict stuff and the parents have to be present, that's a positive defense.
Well, there's a qualitative difference between handing penthouses out at the door and having libraries filled with educational materials that some are not appropriate for other people. And the library does not allow that kind of distribution of stuff like that.
And library books aren't under the Tennessee statute. Library books are not really covered by that.
And you know what's funny, but all the stuff we're talking about, they don't even make books like that anymore. Everything's online. We go back to our point, everything's a push button. You can't even buy a magazine anymore. I mean, everything, like when we were kids and there was all the mystery around stuff, everything's online. Let me go.
My daughter tells me you can still find anatomy stuff in World Book, though.
I would think so. Maybe not as graphic, but
it's kind of a fold out. It's pretty good if you want to learn something about anatomy.
I'm too old. I can't change it. I'm just anyway. The question comes down to: has your library 4 library boards? And I presume that some of these materials are in all 4 libraries.
There's the 14 books that I saw the other day. There's 10 of them that are in Clinton's library. 5 of them are in Rocky Top, and 5 of them are in Norris. Mm-hmm. Okay. And a new copy of one of the ones that was objectionable was donated today to Clinton. People on the other side are. We do get book donations. I donated a book about my wife and her classmates. I did read it beforehand, and it doesn't contain any.
I think that's a lot
material.
of work for librarians to do all that, and I guess that's their job. But I guess my question is, since you've been there the 1.5 years or 2 years, have you seen somebody say, "Yes, you're right. That book needs to go"? Ever had to pull the book off a shelf?
I don't think we have banned one, but the process is not. Often doesn't get to the board. If something is pornographic, the librarian will not.
Is there other problems besides pornographic? I mean, you can have other things.
Nobody seems to object to the fact that you've got a gentleman from Oak Ridge pointed out that you can go in the library and you can get out the Rape of Nanking, the story about what the Japanese did to the Chinese in before World War II. And it's graphic. It describes what goes on. You can check that book out.
Yeah.
You can check out my least favorite book still in the library.
Well, I've read a lot of history, and there's some very graphic stuff in there. I mean, you know, when we were growing up, that stuff was pretty much started to be readily available. And I just don't know when you cross the First Amendment and say, this is inappropriate. Now, as I said before, the materials that I reviewed, which were mostly the cartoon characters and all that stuff, I would not put that in my library if I was a librarian.
I wouldn't either.
But that doesn't mean I'm right.
Right.
I mean, trained people can look at it and see, and I think it has an educational focus. I think it all goes over the line. But there's a process. Screaming at county commission and screaming at other people is not the process.
Well, part of the process, though, is going in, and if they do look at those books, they don't like that book, they can reconsider each one of those books, and we'll look at them.
That's right.
We've so far, the library board has considered the 3 books, which are not that. And our attorney looked at that. He said that it doesn't meet the standard. Now, depending on, there's also part of it is how are they displayed, and because we keep the books in the library, we don't put them out on the front step and just let them go to anybody, and people can control that. It's one of the things that at the meeting in March, where we had basically 3 hours, 69 people talked at that meeting. About 260 people were there.
Phew.
And of those 69 people, nobody really talked about the fact that the library already has a process on reviewing these books.
And that's what I want to get this show. Who puts the things? I want you to know there is a process. This isn't a random, we're throwing stuff on the shelves. I mean,
No. The reconsideration process is pretty straightforward, and people are exercising it right now.
Mm-hmm.
It hadn't been done. I went about 2 years on the library board and never saw a member of the community come in and talk to the library board until this year. And so it's democracy in action. People are coming out and making their feelings heard.
more people coming out in defense of the system and the stuff than there are critical of the system. How's that work?
When we had 69 speakers by my count, and you can see it on YouTube, 2 hours and 51 minutes of it.
I'll take your word for
You
it.
can listen to either one, all of them, and about 42% of those people were for what the library is doing. 24 were negative. They said that it was wrong, ranging from accusations of trying to recruit children into a gay lifestyle to people that just thought that it was the wrong thing to have in the library. And those comments generally were
That's where the agenda goes back to.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And there were 3 people I couldn't really understand which side they were on. I think they were on both sides each at the time, and I can argue both sides of a lot of arguments.
Sounds like a lot of due process.
So 64% basically were in favor of what the library board's doing.
I don't judge either side. Everybody's trying to do what they think is best, and they're working at it, et cetera, et cetera. I just think there's a methodology. You know, we have hearings trying to ban representatives in Nashville today. We have other things going on. It just seems like it's gotten so heated.
Well, it has gotten heated, but remember, the county commission is also part of the process. If they don't like our decision, the county commission can come in and they can rearrange things, they can overrule things, they can fire people.
But they can't take a book off a shelf. That's not their job.
Well, essentially, they probably eventually could, but it would be a political process, not a librarian's review process.
But let's say I'm a county commissioner. Say I'm Tracy Wandell from Claxton.
Right.
He's a brave guy. He walks into the library in Clinton and says, "I don't like this book. I'm taking it off." I think you'd have to go through the system, wouldn't you?
That would. If he doesn't check it out, he doesn't have a library card. That's theft.
Well, you know what I mean. Getting around all that, I'm saying Tracy.
But no,
I
mean, if he wants to check
Navy
the thing
man
out,
too. Navy man too.
That's
Tracy's
right.
a Navy man.
If we want to check, if they want to check the book out, we did have an attempted confiscation of books the other day by the sheriff's office.
How'd
Deputies.
that come out? I heard there was
Well,
investigation.
they weren't. The books weren't in the library. They were over in the DA's office being reviewed. So I'm sure the sheriff eventually got them and got to sit down and look at the things. And I haven't heard his determination yet as to
It's a
whether he likes them or
cultural,
not.
you know, and this is in my area of expertise from polling and reading, but we have a cultural collision going on between Massachusetts, Michigan, and the South, and sides are angry and
Well, I remember the impeach Earl Warren
I remember that.
signs that were on 411 in particular, and up Highway 70 going toward Crossville. You could find them. I also remember they blew up Clinton High School because people didn't want the little black children to come down the hill.
Yeah.
And that's a similar issue. A lot of people at the meeting talked about going back to an era where we're discriminating against people. And that's fundamentally what's going on, is people do not want their child to influence somebody else. They think that book will influence the child, and they don't want that person's lifestyle around them.
And in that sense, that's a legitimate view.
It is a legitimate view for a parent.
But I think, and I got no problem with that, but there's a due process to do that.
And there's also the concept that you don't get to control what somebody else's children read. And the library
That's right.
is for everybody.
That's correct.
So the little LGBTQ plus person needs a nice book to look at also.
I think so. I think that's how the system works. It's fair.
I don't necessarily like it.
Nah, but I mean, that's just, but there's a lot of things I don't like.
That's
All the way back. I mean, I'm not, and we go back to me and Camp and all this other stuff. I mean, you get to the point where some of these books can influence somebody. I mean,
They can.
I mean, they're articulate and I mean, Putin's a cult hero in the United States with a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of things in different places. Obviously, Ukraine didn't help his image, but the bottom line is that with today's modern technology and everything, and the different things, there are leaders around the world who can become popular in different parts of the country, and it's just part of it. I mean, it's just I don't even know where I'm going with that statement, except to say that you can't control it all, you can't channel it all.
And as you pointed out, the access on the internet is so much broader and so much easier to access, and it's
so
not,
much more
And
rapid.
unless the parent controls what goes through that,
And we know that ain't happening.
what goes through that iPhone, there's a pipeline from that person that you don't want to influence your child right into the bedroom every night between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning when you're not watching. And that's not happening in the library.
And let's be fair, if you sit there and you talk on your phone about certain subjects, the algorithms are getting picked up and they're sending you ads for the same things. I mean, you talk about manipulation. A book on row 8 ain't doing it.
No.
Excuse my language, but it's just, there's a lot going on. But I respect the people that want to control what their children see and what
I do
other
too, and
people-
I understand them, and I sing in the choir with them, and
Sure.
we have the same issue going on in the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church split up back in 1840 over slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, parts of it are being taken away from the mainstream Methodist Church over the LGBTQ issues.
Yeah, that's been an issue for, I think it's come in the Episcopal Church. It was gay priests for a decade or two, and there's other things. But, time marches on, and I don't know. I don't have any answer. Let's take one more break, and let's come back and finish this up with some talk about what the real solutions are. You got me, Chandler?
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
When should you get tested for COVID-19? You have symptoms of COVID-19, such as runny nose, congestion, sore throat, fever, cough, shortness of breath, muscle pain, headache, chills, or loss of taste or smell. Current testing recommendations say everyone should get tested immediately if they have symptoms of COVID-19. If you have symptoms, be sure to follow recommendations about how long to stay home and away from others. For more information, visit our If You Are Sick or Test Positive webpage.
In East Tennessee, winter can be a wild ride of constantly changing weather and cold outdoor fun. Warm up with natural gas heat, hot water, cooking, and soft, comfy clothes. More affordable and reliable than electricity, natural gas makes homes cozy and more valuable. Whether you're a contractor or savvy homeowner, switch to natural gas for your primary energy source. Visit us online at orud.org or call today. Oak Ridge Utility District, your affordable energy source.
Welcome back to our final segment. I want to take a second and talk about one of our sponsors, IB3 Global Solutions, who do so much in the national security spectrum. I mean, the help they provide in terms of products and services that help their clients around the country and across the energy mission, just outstanding community support. This president of the company and CEO is on the Oak Ridge City Council, which, trust me, that's donation time there. I mean, that's just another, as you know, there's not, the local government needs good people, but this company is one of the key players in our country, and I'm really glad to have them on as a sponsor, and I really, really like Sean Gleason. All right, so we're going back in here, and we were talking about the ACLU, who in my day, they defended, the Nazis in Skokie in Illinois. They defended the KKK, and we're talking about a pure constitutional group. Yes. But they basically said, look, I don't agree with anything they're saying, but I agree with their right to say it. So I think some of that's what we grew up with, is that everybody has a right to their opinion to say it. Now, how they say it, I agree with the conservatives. How they say it when my kid's involved is different. So I don't know how that works, but I don't know how you protect that. But I have a feeling that the Anderson County Library System is doing the right thing and trying their best to get things done. You were going to recap some things. Let's talk about it.
We did litigate a lot of this stuff back in the 60s and 70s. We kind of re-argued a lot of it in the Clinton era because things changed a little bit at that time. And when I went to UT, I did take constitutional law from Dr. Otis Stevens. He was a blind lawyer. Okay. And I always thought that was a real good analogy for who you took constitutional law from was a guy that liked the scales of justice, the lady holding the scales of justice. Yeah, with the blind thing. She has her eyes closed. Yeah. And no she doesn't look at who the people are. That's right. She doesn't look at what their color is. She listens to their arguments. That's right. And that's what we've tried to do with the library board.
Did he have an example? Did he have a teaching example?
Yeah. Well, Potter Stewart was a guy that had just come out with this thing. I don't know what pornography is. I can't explain it to you, but I know it when I see it. And that was always a story that he liked to touch. That's interesting. I thought I'd be a smart guy and say, well, wouldn't you have trouble, Dr. Stevens, seeing that? He said, as he's standing up there reading Braille, he says, no, Mr. Mariner, I wouldn't have any trouble at all. Somebody would give me a Braille copy of whatever it is, and I have very sensitive fingers. Ask my wife.
Oh, that's excellent. All right, go ahead. So anyway, where do we go from here with the library board? Go over the process one more time. What are we going to do with all of these reviews, and what are they going to do? Let's say we're the ones filing the complaints, okay? You make the decisions. These books are fine. We're not going to take them out. What do they do next?
You go in and talk to the librarian, and you go through the process of the reconsideration. It'll go to the board. The board will say yes or no, and then it becomes a political issue.
Those can be complicated.
And those can be very complicated. There were 4 people on the county commission that wanted to get books reviewed, specific books reviewed. And so far, that's not a majority. So I think those people who do not want those books in the library, they can continue to push that process.
So if you get 10 people on commission, it's a majority that says they want them doing, then what do you do then?
Well, you take the books out, I guess.
Okay. All right. If you get
I don't particularly like that solution, but that's.
See, I think they're restricted to your financial budgets and your board members. I'm not sure they have the authority to micromanage. It'd be like me saying, Mayor Frank has this ambulance service with Nathan, and they're putting these routes together, and this is how we're going to send the ambulances out in the most effective way. But somebody comes off of West Outer Drive in Oak Ridge and says, no, I want that further out west. You need to put it out here, and 10 citizens come in and tell them how to run their ambulance service. I don't think they have the authority to go in and tell the
Well, they
ambulance
shouldn't,
service how.
but they can always hire somebody that for the library board that agrees with it.
You mean appoint somebody?
Right.
But that's not a quick solution.
Not a quick solution. My process, somebody asked me to be on the library board because they had a vacancy in Norris. Norris City Council said he'd be okay on the board. It went through the library board, and it took a month to get a new person. There's probably a couple of vacancies right now on the library board.
And to be fair to the people involved on the wanting the books removed, if you get one or two that are adamant about it, and you start using the word pornography everywhere, it gets very hard not to support that because you look like you know what I'm saying. You got to say, well, yeah, I don't want that in my library. You don't have time to interview.
Except there is a definition for pornography.
What is that definition?
And it's that community standard.
Okay.
And right now, one can argue that the community standard is a little more liberal than the people who want to take those books out.
That's a fact. Oak Ridge is much more global, much more integrated, and I think Norris is too. And there's some other areas, and that doesn't make them better. It just makes them different. And I think those people have a higher tolerance for diversity and things of different perspectives on things. And people with a more basic conservative-driven thing don't have as much tolerance for diversity and that stuff. And that's not a good or bad thing. I'm not on one side or the other. That's just a definition of the issue. And I don't think the issue's going away until they find another issue.
Well, I'm a little to the right of Attila the Hun on some things, particularly some military stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
But on the thing on books are a window on the world to some people.
Yeah.
We support people who are educating their children at home.
Mm-hmm.
We entertain some people. We give people knowledge about how to pass a boater's test.
Mm-hmm.
We help people with their taxes.
Oh, a lot of good
So
fun doing stuff.
the library does a lot of things, but it's that window on the world, and I'm not going to be willing to shut that window on the world without a fight. So
No, and we need our libraries, folks. That's a very now. One thing we haven't talked about is libraries provide technology help. They provide.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that a little bit. What does the modern library do?
Well, we have a wide variety of material in the library that is electronic, and they also have internet access. But now there's some restrictions in what they can do on there, and we have software on there that tries to keep a young child from being able to go and download pornography.
Sure.
We have
It's kinda hard to
software
do that.
on the computer that tries to keep it from being changed so it does other than the access to the things that you want to. But that's good for a lot of people because there are some people that do not have access to computers.
Well, there's economic issues here,
Right.
standard of living. And libraries as a whole have always provided help to those. Now, in our day, everybody used them. We went to do reports and we went to
Right.
do stuff. But today, now we just email it to each other. Right?
100 people a day use Clinton Library.
Yeah.
Oak Ridge, which has a different system. Now, Oak Ridge doesn't have a library board. They just have the librarian working straight for the city manager.
And you know, the librarians in Oak Ridge do a great job. I know a couple of them, and they work hard. And
They have about 500 people a day that come into their library.
oh yeah, and most of them are seniors.
Yeah, and the traffic that you see over at Rocky Tops, probably in the dozens instead of in the hundreds. So each
No
library
less
is a little bit
important. No
different.
less important. And it's a different thing. Yeah, I'm surprised the Oak Ridge community hasn't weighed in a little bit more on this. And they
Well,
probably
we
will.
have had a lot of people at those meetings that they're Anderson County residents. Some of them may have library
taxes.
cards. They pay taxes in Anderson County, and they get to have a voice. A lot of people from Oak Ridge came down and talked on both sides of the issue.
Oak Ridge has got a tremendous
And
history.
we had 4 or 5 LGBTQ folks who stood up and said, the library is the only place I could get access to materials where I could look at something that made me feel good about myself, that I wasn't a freak, that I was a good person.
That's interesting. Adults say that?
Adults,
Yeah.
yes. Adults have said that. So that's a little bit different. There was a lady that gave a kind of a book review on Grandpa's Camper, and Grandpa was
that's
a
how
gay.
it started, wasn't it?
Grandpa was a gay guy,
Yeah.
and he had a gay partner who died, and he was very sad. And her book review on that was, well, this is really the story of a little girl who goes to find her grandpa and helps him with a project that brings his spirits up, and they travel around the country.
That's the way I took it.
And that's a good story. That's a good news story. A lot of people, when I read it, I didn't see that. I didn't see that value in it, even though I did vote to keep that in the library. But different people see different library books in a different light.
Is it true that John Reagan made the statement, "This is not pornography," at the meeting? He stood up and said he's looked over the stuff. Didn't he take a stand that was...
It wasn't Reagan. It was Yeager.
Yeager, Ken Yeager.
Yeah, he said that's not pornography, yes.
Ken from Rome County, the state senator?
No,
Jay?
Jay Yeager
Okay.
from here. And
I heard it.
He looked at the books for us. We asked him to do that, do a review, make sure this is not pornography. Said it doesn't meet the pornography standard as he sees it. He did say, as most good lawyers say, of course, I might have to review that in different circumstances,
Sure.
different positions, and if somebody's handing it to a child without their parent knowing about it, that's the other thing that we need to make people understand. There is a process right now that you can have full control of what your child gets out of the library.
Yeah, you can put governors, for lack of a better word, on it.
If you don't want them to have that access, don't sign the library card. If you don't want them to pull something out of the stacks, watch what they're doing.
That's right. But that's part of the problem. They don't watch what they're doing sometimes. Yeah, I'm glad you cleared that up, because I've heard John, who's a friend of mine's name, I've heard Jay, I've heard all of them, that all of them had made some comments about they were hesitant. Now, of course, I thought, a lot of these people that are elected officials come from educational families, educators, and educators have a different look at things sometimes than others do. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job. I just want to say I appreciate all the librarians and all the hard work they're doing. And it's hard when you have to do this. I think checks and balances are good. I think these people bringing books and making them review them, that's a positive thing. That's part of their job.
Right.
But the question is, what happens when there's 150 books to review and 180 books to review? Now everybody on the other side says, well, here's this thing about, anarchists and stuff like that. We don't need that. That's the threat to our government. Then you start reviewing that. Then you start reviewing this, like you said. Then you start reviewing.
Well,
it becomes a
democracy is never finished, and
No.
we're going to have to fight these fights pretty much forever. Generations before us fought them.
Yep.
We fought them in the 1960s and 70s.
Yep.
And
But we seem to be more civil. Weren't we more civil than this?
No, I don't know. They shot Martin. They
did shoot Martin.
They shot.
That's business, though. I still say to this day, a lot of those assassinations were money driven.
Yeah.
Strikes in Memphis, disruptions of business. I may be wrong.
Most of them were hatred driven, really. I think.
You think so? We see you're obviously a little younger. I mean, that's probably. I just reading again, right? Reading again. I remembered I played a basketball game when I was in freshman college. I mean, it was 74 or 5, and we played over back in the back gym over at Brushy Mountain. And I can remember it's one of the better games I've ever had, 50, 60 points. We're playing in there. And I remember James Earl Ray standing in the corner of the gym watching the game.
Wow.
I can remember that.
Well, I always, you think that the hardest thing to do, I think that's in the Bible is Matthew 5:44, where Jesus tells us we're supposed to love our enemies.
That's right. It's hard to reconcile.
He didn't say it was going to be easy.
No, and it's hard to reconcile it. I mean,
and in a democracy, you have to be able to do that. You have to, at some point, be able to put down your placards and stop screaming at somebody and start listening. And you may have to compromise on stuff.
we're not very good at that anymore.
We're not very good at that anymore, but
they're no better in New York and Massachusetts. I mean, I'm just saying we're in a different part of the world.
And when you watch 260 people show up at something that they care about and nobody gets in a fight, we did okay.
Yeah.
Did okay.
You did good. You did good, and you keep good. Thank you guys who work in the libraries. Thank you for everything you're doing in library science. People don't understand that's not a volunteer job. You get a master's degree in library science, you do things. It's a very hard, and you deserve all the credit in the world. And please make stuff available to us that helps our kids, and get rid of the stuff that doesn't. But, I mean, I appreciate the library board. They can't be a fun job right now.
No, it's pretty much a backwater job, and suddenly it got hot.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, and
that's why they pay us the big bucks.
Any Oak Ridgers on the library board?
On the library board, no, because
because
Oak Ridge is a separate system, and they have
Well, I thought because you use their tax money, maybe they would have a Whatcom County Commission.
They certainly spoke out at the meeting, though.
They did. I did. Well, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for your 22 years in the Navy. That's the stuff that really matters, like you say. I mean, we've got global threats all over the world.
being a volunteer is a lot of fun.
Hey, it's great to be back. Good to see you guys. I'll be on next week with Wendy Manis. Thank you. Thanks for everybody. Orred, thank you for all you do.